You know that feeling, right? You spend a whole weekend planting. You step back, and your garden, it looks perfect. It's full of color, life, just so much promise. But then, a few months later, that perfect picture starts to, well, fall apart. Today, we're going to dig into why so many beautiful gardens fade after that first glorious season, and how just a small shift in your thinking can create a space that looks amazing all year long.
I mean, this is the moment we all dream of. Let's call it planting day. The beds are packed, the colors are just popping, and every single plant looks like it's in the perfect spot. It's like a snapshot of a finished garden, and it's so satisfying. Mostly because we buy just enough plants to make it look totally complete from the get-go. But fast forward just a couple of months. That beautiful picture starts to unravel. The plants that were supposed to grow are now literally fighting each other for space. You start seeing those yellow lower leaves from no air and no light. What looked so finished on day one now just looks crowded and kind of messy. And all of a sudden, your weekend is spent cleaning up, not enjoying it.
And by the time October rolls around, the whole scene has changed. Those flowers that were carrying the entire show are gone. And what's left behind? Bare patches, messy-looking stems, and these really awkward gaps. The garden that felt so full and intentional back in May now feels, well, thin and a little bit neglected. And look, this isn't because you didn't try hard enough. It's because the initial plan was flawed.
So that brings us to the big question, why does this keep happening? Why do our best intentions so often lead to a garden that only looks good for like a minute? Well, the answer is in a really common mistake that pretty much all of us make. It's something we can call the planting day trap. It's this mindset where we're totally focused on the instant gratification, that full garden bed right after we plant, instead of thinking about how that garden is going to live and breathe and grow over a whole year, and all the years after that. And the difference in thinking is huge. On one side, you have that common habit to just fill every single inch and focus only on the flowers because you want it to look finished right now. But on the other side, the pro mindset is to plan for how big a plant is going to get, to think about its shape and its form, and to focus on the structure first. It's all about planning for a garden that ages well. Now, that planting day thinking leads directly to something called the second-year slump. It usually hits around 12 to 18 months in, right when the plant roots really start to spread out. Suddenly, everything's overcrowded, airflow plummets, disease risk goes way up, and your weekend work goes from gentle care to straight-up damage control. If that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. It really is all about giving plants the space they're going to need in the future. I know it can look a little sparse at first, but here's a fantastic rule of thumb. When you're planting shrubs, space them out to about 60 to 70% of their final mature width. Trust me, that one little decision can save you years of having to go back and fix things. Okay, so we've identified the trap. How do we avoid it? It's simple, really. We shift our focus from temporary color to permanent structure. We start planning for all 4 seasons, not just for one perfect weekend in spring. This picture illustrates the goal perfectly. It's late fall, there are hardly any flowers, but this garden doesn't look empty or messy at all. Why? Because it has strong bones. The shapes of the trees, the crisp lines of the hedges, they create a structure, like a visual anchor that holds the whole thing together long after the blooms are gone. And this quote just nails it. When your garden has good structure, your job as a gardener totally changes. You're no longer running around putting out fires, trying to rescue messy beds or fill in gaps. Your maintenance shifts from constant rescue missions to a predictable, manageable routine. So how do we actually build this kind of structure? It's really not as complicated as it sounds. We can use a pretty simple framework that breaks the whole design down into these logical layers. Okay, so this framework has 4 key layers. First up is the backbone. These are your structural plants that give you shape all year. Second is the seasonal layer for your flowers and interesting leaves. Third, you've got fillers. These are temporary plants to plug the gaps while your backbone grows in. And finally, the ground layer, to cover the soil and keep weeds down. I love this way of thinking about it. It's a total mindset shift. You're not just buying plants anymore. You're hiring them for a specific role in your garden. And if a plant's only contribution is a few weeks of flowers, well, then it's just a temporary contractor. Your goal is to hire a solid, full-time team. And this table basically breaks down those jobs. You need evergreen anchors for mass in the winter. You need deciduous plants for structure because they have a beautiful silhouette even with no leaves. You need foliage mass from big perennials to provide volume, and then, after all that, you add your seasonal highlights for that pop of color. When you build a team like this, your garden is never out of a job.
And hey, let's not forget about you, the gardener. How you actually move through your garden is a huge part of the design. The picture on the left, that's what happens when we don't plan for access. It becomes an obstacle course. But on the right, you see a maintenance loop, a clear path that makes every single task, from watering to weeding, feel simple and efficient. And you have to make that decision before you plant anything.
Of course, no garden exists in a perfect little bubble. A great plan has to be grounded in the reality of your specific yard, and just as important, your actual life.
See, your yard isn't just one environment. It's a collection of tiny little microclimates. That spot right next to a hot south-facing wall, it's basically a desert compared to that shady, damp corner by the fence. Understanding these differences is like getting a secret map to your own property. So observing these patterns, where the sun hits, where the wind blows, it's not a chore. It's the critical intel that separates a garden that just survives from one that really, truly thrives. And this might be the most important point of all. You have to match your ambition to your reality. A high-maintenance English garden is a beautiful dream, for sure, but if you only have an hour on the weekend, it can quickly turn into a nightmare of chores. True success isn't about creating the most complicated design. It's about creating a garden that fits into your life, one that brings you joy, not a weekly dose of guilt. Okay, I know we've covered a lot, but the goal here isn't to make you feel overwhelmed and want to tear everything out. The goal is to give you a new way to see your garden and empower you to make small, smart changes. This is probably the best piece of advice you'll ever get. Don't try to fix everything at once. Just reframe your approach. Think of it as a gradual, low-stress process. Pick just one spot that really bugs you and make that your project for the season. So here's your first simple step. Before you go out and buy a single new plant, just take 15 minutes. Walk around your yard and find that one spot. The corner where things always wilt, the path that's gotten too narrow, the bed that goes totally bare in the fall. Just identify it. That's it. That's your starting point. I want to leave you with one final thought. We always ask our gardens to tell a story of spring color and summer abundance. But what if we changed the question? What is the most important story your garden has to tell in the quiet stillness of winter? When you start planning for that story, that's when you're on the path to creating a truly great garden.